Hello everyone, and that says that I'm live, so I must be live. Good to see you all. I'm sorry, once again I'm back with a Hangout instead of the Wirecast setup. I think I figured out what the issue is. It's an issue apparently with YouTube's doing something to my account. It works with other accounts, but not with this Hikosaemon account, so hopefully it will be fixed soon. I'm sorry I missed 2.5 Oyajis on Wednesday. I was sick, and it's one of those things where the medicine was almost worse than the, the actual illness. It just knocked me out. And I was asleep. I was meaning to wake up, but it's not that bad. It's just a throat thing, and it's pretty much better now. But partly because of this, and because I don't sound great, and I'm still not perfect, and I don't want to make it worse again. I'm only going to take 30 minutes tonight, so I'll try to keep this quick and simple. Below the video are the links, both for the Flipboard magazine with the topics that I've picked to talk about today, although of course you can see all my other magazines, which I also have just updated today and curated, and they're all pretty awesome, as well as the link to the YouTube party, which is now just 2 weeks away. September 6th, Tokyo Sports Cafe in Roppongi, 138 RSVP so far, and maybe a lot more actually to come. So I'm going to try to make sure I can get the full use of the entire venue, which will be awesome. But yes, so it's all looking in pretty good shape. I can't show you the comments, so I guess I'm going to have to describe them while I talk to you, but yeah, that's all good. So I am going to, you know what, I'm just going to rearrange my screens a bit to make it easier to talk to you guys there. So I'm looking at the camera, at least I'm looking in the direction of the camera when I talk to you. Good to see you. It's been a crazy week for news, I guess. I mean, there's of course been the ongoing stuff with Ferguson. There's been a lot of crazy sort of international news. There's a small earthquake tonight. It's the first one I felt in a while. I mean, it must have been a Shindo too. I was lying down, which is why I guess I felt it. No one else in the house felt it. But yeah, and as you can hear, my voice isn't great, so I'm going to keep it short. Russell, good to see you. But I hope you're enjoying this on your PS3. Cousin Neil, good to see you. Contensai, good to see you as well. And Charlie Brown, g'day. Good to see you. Charlie Brown, are you? Barringer, good to see you. Michael Peckett, evening all indeed. Anti-exaggeration spray, sunglasses, caffeine, very good. I loves AKB48, good to see you. Travis Moore, thank you again for the awesome graphics, which will get put to use again on this. I always like to make the thumbnail before the video, which I can do when I use Wirecast, but I can't do that tonight. Oh yeah, reminds me, I was going to wear something tonight, which I will do now. So boom. Here it is. It's pretty sweet, eh? I think it came out great. I haven't worn this around the house yet. I'm not quite sure my wife is ready for it, but it's cool. I'm very happy. So I got 2 of these. I got this in the tank top. Yeah, they're very big sizes. But yeah, no, so that's pretty awesome. I'm glad to have that. Cousin Neil, the police have tanks, so you really feel protected. That's right. In fact, actually, that reminds me. When I went to UK, I was at Heathrow a few years ago now. My dad picked me up there, and I saw the police walking around in the airport, and they were like in full black combat gear, pads, you know, submachine guns and stuff. And I saw them, and I grew up in a military family, like living in army camps, surrounded by heavily armed military people. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And when I saw the guy just walking around in the crowds at Heathrow, I just like reflexively said, "Holy crap!" And my dad, who was living there, who's, you know, he's a bit of an old conservative guy. He was, you know, don't overreact. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. And Dad was like, well, no, you know, I feel safer with them there like that. I was like, I don't feel safer with them there like that. The last time I'd seen a machine gun in an airport was in Bucharest Airport in 1995, when that country was basically like Somalia. And this is where I'd been told to, you know, bribe the border guards with chocolates. So that's where the militarization makes me feel. It makes me feel like you're in Wild West Eastern Europe. But yeah, you know, the whole world's kind of gone crazy. As once again, brilliant take by John Oliver, which I did put into my YouTube links on the YouTube magazine. John Oliver's Last Week Tonight, which I guess is kind of like what this is, except he's actually funny and insightful. He did a fantastic summary of the Ferguson thing in his last show, which I think has gone very viral around YouTube. And actually, many of the points which he made in that video are some of the points that Obama's now taking up as well. But yeah, and with Travis Moore, you know, that's right. You do get it at the UK airports, and maybe it is with the terrorist stuff. But the UK actually had real terrorism, right? Like 60s, 70s, 80s. They had the IRA. They had pubs getting blown up all over the place, and it was still. They never reacted like that. You know, a couple of Middle Eastern background or, you know, Islamic background terrorists, and they go crazy. And I don't know. I mean, is it really that different? I mean, it was actually, I think the risk was much worse when it was people who looked like regular, you know, Caucasian British people doing it. When it was Irish people, you know, they didn't react so crazy. So I don't know. It's fear generating fear, which is, I guess, a lot of what's going on. But anyway, onto more positive stuff. Opening up the so the link is straight below the video. Opening up the news topics which I've picked out tonight. And by the way, feel free to drop me any topics that you want. Yeah, apparently there was Marcin Sebula mentions indeed there was a magnitude 6.0 in the Bay Area. Again, it's kind of hard to tell what that means. I looked at the shake map, which seemed to show that the shake map wasn't too widespread. Well, it was a magnitude 6, so it shouldn't be that widespread. It certainly wasn't that much around San Francisco City itself. It is possible with a magnitude 6, if it's very shallow, that it could do a lot of local damage. If it's deep, sometimes it's nothing, which is, again, why you want a shake map. You don't want a magnitude, you know, indication. But yeah, no, I hope everybody's okay there in the Bay Area. In fact, Iceland, Bay Area, and Tokyo have all had earthquakes like in the last 24 hours, which is, I don't know, probably not related, but but anyway, no, that's why I'm going to keep it short tonight. So topics that I've got. Article by Gaijinpot talking about growing up as a half in Japan by Yumi Nakata, who herself apparently is half Southeast Asian, and so points out that people didn't often even notice that she was half unless she told them. And it's written, again, kind of speculatively about what it must have been like for Caucasian halves. Yeah, she says, at least I look Japanese, and people would never know that you were half unless you tell them. But what about the half children who look non-Japanese? So in that respect, she's kind of stepping into the shoes of people that she's not to speak for this. But, you know, and there's a nice thing of famous and successful half people and so on. So, yeah, but she does point out a thing which is consistent with, I think, a lot of my own half of friends have. And that now that I have a half a son, I think about, which is Japan probably is a it's probably better now than it was in the 90s, although frankly in Tokyo it's a lot, yeah, I think it's fine. And really the only issue with it is kids are treated as being a little bit special, you know, which can be unwelcome in a country like Japan where people try so hard to blend in. Even if it's favorable special, you know, you just don't want to be different. Yeah, you know, the first taste of it we really got was when I went to Kumamoto on this vacation recently. And, you know, there were small things that people were shocked at hearing me speak Japanese. There was somebody saw my son next to my wife. He kind of looked at my son and looked at me, and then he looked at my wife and said, "He's half." And, well, half of that, you know, he says it right in front of him, like, you know, like he's a bloody circus monkey or something, and forgets that, you know, it's not really good manners to say that directly in front of someone. But I guess that still happens probably in the less populated parts of Japan. But yeah, there's a nice discussion of it. There's an actual better thing. There's a video, 12 things half and half Japanese and hapa, which I understand is the Hawaiian term for mixed race. That hapa get, which yeah. And there's a few things that I chuckled at. Having a lot of half friends and having worked with them, I like they get the questions like, "What are you?" You know, things which people don't suspect would be that. Yeah, but are you more? That's. And the other one is that, yeah, you know, you really don't look Japanese at all, or you really don't look that white. And they kind of, yeah, it's kind of funny to watch, and it's stuff which I've recognized from my friends, and that indeed, yeah, my son is probably going to have to face himself. There's an article I've also uploaded there, or I've included in there, which is forwarded by Rochelle Kopp, who's a fantastic Japan culture watcher. I'm talking about tactics that UBS use to fire people in Japan. The reason that they do these kind of sneaky, horrible things is that it's basically impossible, and this is good for you all to know as well. Well, until Koizumi's time, until about 2003, it was just about impossible to fire someone in Japan. I mean, pretty short of doing something to get put into jail. You know, things in America, people would just give you your box and have the security guard escort you out. You couldn't do it in Japan. Japan's got, in spite of its reputation, you know, it's got a very strong labor union, socialist kind of background. Koizumi he put in legislation which allowed companies to hire people on a temporary contracts basis. And the idea of this wasn't for it to be a separate category of workers, you know, it wasn't to reclassify existing, you know, lifetime employment people, but it was to allow companies to have kind of 10% or whatever of the workforce to be kind of flexible, so that, you know, when they need to scale back their operations or whatever, they don't go out of business under the stress of not being able to restructure. But of course, what's happened since 2003 is now something like more like half of new hires now are on contracts rather than full-time formal employees. And those people on those temporary contracts, which is pretty much every English teacher, it's very rare that they would give full employment, like full formal employment to English teachers, unless you're like running the actual main company. They are easy to fire. But if you're working at a Japanese company and you are not a hakken shain, if you are not on a temporary work contract, yeah, you know, even in cases of misconduct, even in cases of screwing up, I mean, even right up to near criminal conduct, it's pretty hard to fire people. So because of this, companies do weird things to encourage people to get the message and leave. Sometimes they, you know, they push them into the proverbial corner office or the window office or the window desk. But even then, people just happily sit there getting no work, being cut off, and they're still getting paid and they still show up. But yeah, you know, there's some pretty overt tactics used by some of the investment banks. And with investment banks, a bit of a pinch of salt. They get paid pretty well, and I think they know that's kind of the deal, that they are not on a lifetime insurance package when they go into those sort of jobs. But again, they have to be really nasty about how they do it. And I don't know what's better. I mean, apparently, I was just reading actually after this that now Abe is considering legislation which would make it easier to fire full-time employees, but they would have to get pretty generous severance packages, which is pretty much how the rest of the world operates. And, you know, it's better than having this kind of mistreatment of people trying to, you know, force them into quitting through being horrible to them, which is kind of what happens. Big news if you're a foreigner, particularly an American in Japan, and you want to wire your money out of Japan, pretty much there are only two banks that really let you do it. There was HSBC before, which shut down its commercial bank, its retail banking operations, followed by its commercial. Actually, they were great while they were here, but they shut down very quickly. So that leaves Shinsei and Citibank, or as I like to call it, Shitty Bank by the Japanese pronunciation. I've used Citibank, and I'm a dissatisfied customer. And I shut down all my accounts with them because they're expensive, they're slow. People say the Japanese banks are slow. Citibank is worse. It was really horrible just trying to wire money in and out of Japan. I had to use faxes still. It was kind of crazy. And anyway, now they're talking about wrapping up their of selling off or wrapping up their their retail operations, which means that Shinsei Bank, which is actually pretty good, is going to be the only bank left for foreigners to use to easily wire money in and out of Japan. So yeah, no, that kind of sucks. But there again, Citibank sucks, and although they're the only choice that a lot of foreigners have, especially for Americans who want to send money back to America easily, so that kind of sucks. Some more news that lots of railway companies are unveiling plans to increase rail access to Haneda. It's kind of funny, no one's talking about increasing rail access to Narita, and I guess some people should. I think I've mentioned the history of Narita here before, but I'll mention it again. When Narita was planned and rolled out in the 60s and 70s, it required the appropriation of a lot of, you know, Narita is pretty cheap land area. It was very rural, all farmers. And so the government And the rail companies and everyone just assumed it would be easy enough to just go and buy up all the rice fields around there and build the airport. The problem is that with Japan, when you're talking about things like land ownership, it's not simply a matter of buying the land, which it would be maybe in America or New Zealand. Some of these people have looked after this land for hundreds of years, for generations, and they feel very attached to the land. And it's not, they don't want to sell no matter what the price. And so the farmers, a lot of these farmers were happy not getting paid out and sitting on their little land plots. But this was interfering with the construction of the international airport near Tokyo, which was Haneda, was overgoing its capacity. So in the end of the day, the government kind of forcefully expropriated a lot of the land, from what I understand, both for the airport and the railway line out to the airport. And this led to a campaign which involved, bombings and murders. I mean, I think the Red Army got involved. A lot of the anti-government, the kind of leftists got involved in this. And this was during the real extreme radical period in Japan's political history in the 60s and 70s. In the area around Narita, like trying to build the airport out there was like a war zone. I mean, the construction companies were, were sending out thugs to beat up the farmers, and the farmers were sabotaging equipment and, attacking people. And it was a pretty, even just to build Narita was such a hard-fought campaign. And it was eventually done, and the airport was used, and a lot of the people in Narita now work at the airport, but there's still opposition to it. And the other half of the plan was that there was supposed to be a bullet train that would run from Tokyo Station out to Narita. And again, the opposition to acquiring the railway land, which was going to be used for that plan, was so intense, and the war zone around Narita Airport was so horrible that they cancelled the plans for the bullet train. And they've ended up with now these two lines: the Keisei line, which goes from Ueno, which is pretty quick. I believe it gets from Ueno to Narita in at the fastest 35 minutes. And the Narita Express, which takes about 40 minutes on a good run. But really, when you're taking into account getting to the train station, buying the ticket, waiting for you have to basically say it takes an hour. So everyone's happier to look at all of these solutions of getting to Haneda, which is much closer to Tokyo anyway, and getting out in 20 minutes. And there's like 6 new train line plans to get out there. Some of these won't be active by the time of the 2020 Olympics, which is what everyone's aiming at. But to my mind, this brings back, I guess people are so, people don't want to even think of using Narita in future plans. Like, again, there was talk about adding another runway to Narita, and when the opposition started up again, they just gave up, and now they're working on converting Haneda. To my mind, they should just fill in all of Tokyo Bay and make it a big airport, because there's 30 million people from Tokyo who there's never enough air slots. The air tickets are expensive because there's always so many people who want to fly. At least with Haneda, you can keep building into the ocean, although the flight routes, of course, do fly over some housing areas, and that's been a problem in the past. But but everyone's looking at anyway increasing the access and convenience of Haneda, which is great, which is why I hope they keep making Haneda bigger. And from Narita, I mean, if it didn't take 1.5 hours, from door to door to get to the flight out there, or 2 hours, if it didn't add 2 hours to a trip, I'd still be out there. And I don't know, they talk about they're building maglevs to Nagoya and Osaka. They could still put bullet trains on the lines that go out there. There are types of bullet train, like the E6 class. They can do 300 km an hour, and they can run on regular train lines. I still think they should put bullet trains out to Narita. You could get out to Narita in 20 minutes from Tokyo Station if you ran a bullet train out there instead of the Narita Express. And then it would be just as convenient, and the travel time would be just the same as if it were Haneda. But everyone is just so fed up with Haneda, with Chiba and with Narita and all the trouble that it's made, that everyone's focusing on Haneda, which is kind of sad. But so long as there's enough airport capacity and space, Haneda's better anyway. So anyway, that's pretty good news. The last 2 or 3, in fact, the last 2 articles that I've got, which I picked up, one is from The Guardian, which I have to say, actually, this is from Cameron Ellen McKean. There's been a lot of really, really good feature articles on Japan in The Guardian lately, like really detailed and really interesting. Wendy Tokunaga's been tweeting a lot of them, and I find her Twitter account very good to follow. She tweets a lot of good Japan culture articles. And she talks about Japan's high-tech disaster parks, which there are a lot of green spaces and parks in Tokyo which have like concrete underground basements that are basically disaster preparation areas for when Tokyo inevitably gets hit by a very large earthquake or some other form of disaster, like a fire, like Tokyo's had many times. Or indeed, nowadays with the way the weather's been going crazy, it could be a typhoon, it could be anything. So really interesting look at that. It's something I didn't know about. But the final one, and the one which I put as the title of the video, is from Rocket News. And it's just a rundown of a magazine survey's pick for the 10 best towns to live in Japan. I'm familiar with some of these, so I thought it'd be fun to run through and get people's views. So I'm just going to check the comments and see where we're at. Sorry, my voice is terrible, isn't it? Travis Moore, reminds you of being in South Africa, except they had handguns there instead of machine guns. Oh, so you're in South Africa. Yeah, I'd love to visit there, actually. I've got friends there. Michael Peckett. Michael Peckett, you growing up in Northern England in the 1980s at school being told by policemen to ignore calls in phone boxes if they should ring in case it was the IRA. Okay, so phoning in warnings, I guess. Whence, that's right, half of them. I'll show you still. 増えれば問題ないと。Yeah, my wife, 妻がもう息子は絶対ウェンツみたいにならないようにしてほしいけど、でもまあ今はそうだよね。なんかその英語できないハーフって。Marston Sebula, the video keeps freezing, does it? I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it's not doing that for everybody. Midori Katsuzaki, Ososigi, konbanwa. No problem, no problem. Kazunil wants to ride the Hyperloop. Indeed, put that out to Narita, and that'd be pretty cool. Pokemon, catch 'em all. That's right. So, do I keep freezing? I'm sorry about that. Well, YouTube just seems to be sucking for everybody at the moment. But anyway, let's go down to the top 10 places in Japan according to Rocket News or whatever. It was actually Era magazine. No, not Era. Aene magazine, which I've never heard of. It's a new magazine apparently where they asked housewives where they'd like to live. So okay, special category. So the ranking from 10 to 1. First, so city number 10 is Hiroshima City, which is interesting. I before I knew anything about Japan, I presumed probably like everyone thinks about Fukushima that it was radioactive and not safe. I did go there once in 1990. I found it a bit grungy, a bit dirty, very industrialized, but apparently people are impressed by the kind and friendly attitude of Hiroshima's citizens. And it is very convenient. It's pretty well developed. It is a major city. They've just had a big problem where they've had so much heavy rains there that they've had landslides that have killed probably 100 people. There's still a lot of people missing, which is also part of the thing about how the cities are on these flat areas and they just push up against the mountains. And it's those houses against the mountains that are in trouble. Number 9 is Nihama from Ehime Prefecture. Which apparently is the same thing, that there's enough jobs and whatever, but it's also close to the inland sea, and it's famous for good food. I've never heard of Nihama myself, but I get that. I mean, Ehime, Kochi in particular is very famous for good surfing, so good ocean down there in Shikoku. Moriya in Ibaraki. I don't know why anyone would want to live in Moriya, but apparently it had a good balance across all the 5 criteria surveyed. Including good shopping facilities, so maybe. Ikoma, which I've never heard of also, which is in Nara Prefecture, is apparently it's a suburb of Nara, but it's 30 minutes away from there. But it is very convenient to Kyoto and Nara and to many of Japan's famous historical spots, as well as being a very convenient place to live. Number 6, I get Fukuoka, Fukuoka City. I'm kind of surprised Fukuoka isn't in the top 3 actually, but there it is at number 6. It is one of the most popular cities in Japan, and it's got very good, friendly culture, great food, very convenient. It's a big city, so yeah, totally get Fukuoka being there. Matsuyama, another one from Ehime Prefecture actually, which is another, I think, a very historical city, famous for its hot springs and good food and stuff like that as well. Number 4, Mitaka City in Tokyo, which I get. Mitaka City's in the western suburbs. And yeah, the western suburbs are definitely, if you go northeast, west, south from central Tokyo, the west is definitely the nicest part of Tokyo. So Mitaka is right in the middle of the nice part of the suburbs. And yeah, I totally get that. It's very convenient. It's like 30 minutes from the center. And that's very nice. Nishinomiya and Hyogo being Kobe, basically, so being near Kobe. And apparently it's close to both Kobe and Osaka, so you've got the convenience of both of those. Good food and whatever, so I kind of get that. Inagi City in Tokyo, which is like on the very, very remote fringes of Tokyo, which again, I'm sorry, I don't get that at all. It's very rural and very farmlandish. It's way out. It's barely connected properly to the rest of Tokyo. It does have its own IKEA and Costco. By the way, they don't call it IKEA in Japan, they call it IKEA, which I think is actually the correct pronunciation under the original Swedish. But there you go. Number 1 is Fujisawa, which is right by the ocean. And indeed, Fujisawa has surfing. It's very convenient. You can work in Yokohama. It's got commuting lines to Tokyo. But you're by the ocean, surfing, good food. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But Fujisawa is number 1, so that's an interesting ranking. I don't know what people feel like. Other people feel like on the list. Midori Komatsuzaki is asking how old is my son. My son is about to turn 5. He's currently 4. Barringer points out housewives do seem to do a lot of surfing in Japan. Yes and no. If there were more surfers, there'd probably be more Chiba and more Miyazaki locations. Or indeed Izu as well. But yeah, Ehime is pretty close to all of that. So yeah, Martian Sebula pointing out that based on the fact that both Russia and America blew up 900 or so nuclear bombs. No, that's right. And they couldn't. So the A-bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima and even from Fukushima have no effect. This is the thing. People are afraid of the radioactive fallout of these. They don't realize that the entire northern hemisphere is covered in a layer of fallout from all of the nuclear tests from a long time ago. And this is what was interesting to me when they were talking about when they found traces of plutonium near Fukushima. They were differentiating it from the Russian, from the Soviet plutonium, and the American plutonium covering Japan from the 1950s and 60s, which is kind of crazy. It means that everything that we eat and breathe has got a little bit of this radioactive dust from that time period. If you're being in the southern hemisphere, and this is actually why so many Germans and anti-nuclear activists settled in New Zealand, because we didn't get exposed to it in the southern hemisphere. And if you're afraid of it, that's where you should go. Well, my throat really is short, so I'm going to wrap it up tonight. So I'm sorry, it is a bit short. It is an awesome T-shirt, is it not? I think it's pretty cool. Party, of course, September 6th, Tokyo Sports Cafe. iPhone coming out probably to be announced September 9th, not long after that. So that'll be pretty awesome. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Apparently, Michael Pickett, he vouches for Nishinomiya. It is nice. It is out of the way, but it's a good balance. Travis H, good to see you. You came to Japan a few weeks ago, and from where you saw, Japan uses only Sony and Apple phones. Yeah, I think the Japanese phone makers really didn't do very well at adapting to the smartphone age. So that's probably a fair call. I see nothing but iPhones everywhere. Fujisawa ka, igai de bikkurishita. Maybe. Well, it's for housewives, so it's for a specific demographic. Yeah, people on surveys I've seen tend to say Fukuoka, Sapporo, Sendai, places like that. So I don't know. It was a bit of a different sort of a list, but it's interesting to see, and they're good options for people who are planning to come to Japan. Anyway, so that is it. As you can hear, I'm still not right, so I'm going to save my voice for Wednesday, or I'll be back with 2.5 Oyajis. I'll be conscious this week, and I'll talk to all you guys later. So peace. And Barringer is right. They did test in Australia, but apparently they didn't have the whole around the southern hemisphere fallout. I don't know. Anyway, see you later. Peace.